Hello everyone, welcome to another Lazy Masquerade video, and today's video is called Exploring 3 Creepy Religion Locked. Locked? Religion Locked? Alright. Mysteries finally unlocked. I guess I get that, what he's trying to say there. Anyways, today's video is 25 minutes long. Make sure you have your water with you. Water is very important. Unfortunately, I do not. It's inside the fridge right now. But anyways, guys, as always, if you enjoy this kind of content, consider leaving a like on the video. It'd be much appreciated. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Josh, and this is what I do. I react to videos, and sometimes I play video games. So if you enjoy that kind of content, consider subscribing and share my videos with friends so then we grow and we can all watch and play some awesome videos and video games together. And if you have any suggestions of any videos you'd like me to watch, go down in my comments below, leave me the link or title to the video, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Anyways, on with the video. I don't know if this is going to be spooky, but we're about to find out. Lazy Masquerade.
Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN.
No
Whether
sponsors.
you're one of my long-term followers, or you've only heard a few of the mysteries and anonymity,
No.
head over to nordvpn.com/masquerade.
No. Alright. Give it to me straight.
So before the video starts, you're probably asking yourself, Lazy, what on earth's a region-locked mystery? It's a term I use to describe mysteries that are only well known in their countries of origin. For example, there could be a case that's infamous in, say, Japan, but that was never picked up on by Western media sites, or that was perhaps just never translated into English in the first place. As such, that mystery is quote-unquote region-locked. You either have to hear about it from a local, or speak the language well enough to not only find it online, but also read about it. The ones I'm examining in this video are still pretty unheard of in the West, and I can assure you, they're all equally bizarre, unsettling, and sensational. So, let's get into it.
Let's get into it,
Here are 3 mysteries from other countries that you've probably never heard of before.
No.
We'll start with a wild case from Malaysia that has all the ingredients of a gory B-movie. Political intrigue, the occult, and a wannabe pop star turned axe-wielding maniac. All the Malaysians already know who I'm talking about, but for the rest of you, that wannabe pop star was Mona Fandey, and this is her story. Born Nur Masna Ismail in 1956, Mona Fandey grew up in Kangar, Perlis, and from a young age craved attention. She loved nothing more than singing and water ballet, and had big dreams of becoming a global superstar. When she met Mohammed Noor Effendi Abdul Rahman, her biggest fan with enough cash to fund her dream, Mona wasted no time in getting him to put a ring on her finger. Now with a wealthy husband to pay for studio time, she was able to release a full-length pop album called Diana. She even managed to get onto several TV shows and sing a few tracks for the whole nation to hear. Link to one of those performances down in the bio. Mona's beautiful melodies and dulcet tones quickly captured the hearts of Malaysians and people everywhere, and within months was the most successful artist in the country's history. Here's what she would have wanted to happen. In reality, her record was actually a flop, and it quickly became apparent that her career as a pop singer wasn't going to take off like she expected. But not making a name for herself wasn't an option for Mona. If she wasn't going to have fame, she was going to have infamy. As such, she hung up her microphone and started dabbling in witchcraft. You know, as you do.
Yeah, as
This very drastic change in direction proved to be surprisingly lucrative for Mona. She started advertising her services as a bomo, basically a local shaman, and over time, she built up a client base. In exchange for an extortionate amount of money, she'd perform a whole host of maleficent services. Curse her clients' enemies, gift them lucky charms, extend their lives. Whatever they needed, she knew a ritual that would make it happen. At least that's what she had people believing.
Oh, yeah.
And not just any people. She had some truly powerful, high-profile clients. Real VIPs, including politicians from the country's ruling party.
Dang.
Pretty soon, she was able to afford things like luxury cars, huge mansions, the finest jewelry money could buy. Mona had finally become the success that she had always wanted to be. But there was one thing missing.
What?
Her name was known and celebrated only by an elite, chosen few, not by the whole nation.
So?
That was all about to change. In 1993, Malaysian politician Mazlan Idris approached Mona and asked for her help. Mazlan wanted to become chief minister and believed that with the help of Mona's black magic, he'd get the post. He offered her 2.5 million ringgit for her services, about 600,000 American dollars.
600,000?
He gave her 500,000 ringgit as a down payment, and 10 land titles as surety for the rest. Well, of course, Mona agreed to bless him, and this blessing came in 2 parts. Firstly, she gave Maslan a talisman consisting of a magic cane and a headpiece, which both supposedly once belonged to Indonesian President Sukarno. She told him that these items would make him invincible. Secondly, she told Maslan to come to her home and take part in a so-called cleansing ritual.
Choose your
Dang
best
it, man!
champions
Go
and put them to the test.
away!
Fight.
According to Mona, this would purify Maslan's spirit and ensure him the chief minister position.
Really? I don't believe
The
that.
superstitious Maslan agreed. Maslan arrived at Mona's home in Raub, Pahang. He found her waiting inside, along with her husband, Mohammed, and one of their assistants, Juraimi Hassan. With candles lit and the mood set, Mona told Maslan to lie on the floor. She slowly placed flowers on his body, chanting as she did to repel any negative spirits. So far, so good.
And then she repeatedly
When she'd
stabbed
finished
him.
placing the flowers, she told Maslan to close his eyes and wait for, quote-unquote, the money to fall from the sky. Well, that sounded pretty good. He closed his eyes and waited. But it wasn't money that came raining down upon him.
Knives!
Without warning, Juraimi, Mona's assistant, chopped off Maslan's head with an axe that she had just handed him. It went rolling across the floor. The talisman of invincibility clearly didn't work. Mona, along with her husband and assistant, then cut Maslan into 18 pieces, skinned them, and buried most of him in a storeroom near the house. Some parts of him were never found, and it's theorized that the trio may have eaten some of Maslan's remains as part of their own shamanistic ritual. After this brutal act, Mona and her accomplices went on with their lives as if nothing had happened.
Oh.
Only difference was, they now all had a bunch of extra cash in their pockets. They all went on spending sprees, and Mona herself bought a Mercedes-Benz and invested in a facelift, no doubt hoping that her career as a pop star might actually take off someday. It wasn't long before Maslan's disappearance was noticed, however. Still, even though he was officially reported missing, for a while, the authorities had no leads to work with. That soon changed. In July of that year, Mona's assistant, Juraimi, was picked up by the cops on unrelated charges, and, while off his head on who knows what, got confused and told them everything that the trio had done that fateful night.
Oh.
He even led them to the storeroom where they'd hidden what was left of Maslan. His remains had been buried 6 feet deep and covered with a cement seal. Still, that's not much use if your accomplice can't stop himself from confessing. It wasn't long before investigators tracked down Mona and her husband as well, and soon a very public trial was underway. Mona quickly became the most talked about woman in all of Malaysia. She basked in the spotlight of it all, never hiding her face from the cameras, and almost always wearing glamorous and colourful dresses as she was paraded by guards to and from courtrooms. Rather than avert her eyes from onlookers, she instead smiled and posed as news teams snapped her photo, never missing an opportunity for her newly lifted face to make the front page of newspapers. On
That's
various
a lifted
occasions,
face?
she was overheard saying things like, "Looks like I have many fans." In her eyes, she was finally famous, a household name, albeit for one of the worst reasons possible. After 2 months, a verdict was finally returned. It took the jury just over an hour to reach their decision.
Well, duh.
All 3 of the group were found guilty and sentenced to death. Mona's reaction to hearing her life would soon end? She said, "I'm happy, and thank you to all Malaysians." She left the courtroom, smiling. The day before their sentence was carried out, Mona and her accomplices requested a last meal of KFC. She met with her family one last time and said her goodbyes.
KFC?
Then, on the 2nd of November,
Seriously?
2001, at 5:59 a.m., Mona, her husband, and her assistant, Juraimi, were all hanged.
They just...
Her final chilling words? "Aku takkan mati."
He just goes...
I will never die.
He just
She
goes
was
over
completely
that?
calm during the entire ordeal and was reportedly smiling when the black hood was placed over her head. 2 of her abandoned mansions still stand and are frequently visited by local ghost hunters. all hoping to meet with the wandering spirit of Mona Fandey, Pahang's most notorious shaman.
Creepy. I don't like that photo, by the way. That's the creepiest photo they have of her. Yeah, we're just going to go over the fact that she wanted... Oh my god, I hate this commercial.
Here's a highly debated one from the Philippines that's equal parts dark and cryptic.
But whatever.
I'll give you a quick overview of the case, and then get into the real mystery of it all.
KFC.
Marijoy and Jacqueline Chong, 21 and 23 respectively, were two sisters living on the island of Cebu. Back in 1997, their lives came to a grisly end when they were taken by a group of 7 men while they were waiting for their ride outside a shopping mall.
Wonderful. I
Those
wonder
men were
what's
Rowan
going to
Adelawan,
happen.
Alberto Caño, Ariel Balansag, Josman Aznar, James Andrew Oy, James Anthony Oy, and, most famously, Paco Larrañaga. More on him later. The men allegedly forced the 2 young women into the back of their van, and then did things to them that I don't want to talk about here. Later, they drove them to a ravine and pushed Marijoy over the edge. Her body was found 2 days later. Jacqueline, on the other hand, has never been found to this day.
Damn.
All 7 of the men were eventually tracked down and arrested. A trial was quickly underway, and rested on the back of the prosecutor's star witness, Davidson Rusia. Rusia claimed to have been with the 7 suspects when the women were taken, and, in return for complete immunity, said that he had testified to that in court. Rusia was handsome, well-mannered, and spoke English fluently. These attributes, combined with him coming clean about what had happened, won him the respect and adulation of the general public and the jury. His confession was enough to get all 7 of the accused found guilty, and each of them were condemned to death. Case closed?
I guess.
Come on, you know it isn't.
Why not?
All 7 of the now guilty men professed their innocence for years while awaiting their sentence to be carried out. They said that Rusia must have been forced by the police to lie about what had happened, that this was some sort of elaborate cover-up. They must have chosen to make Rusia the key witness because they'd come across best in the public eye. Indeed, Rusia had been involved with numerous gangs over the years, and one of his mantras was, "Do what the leader tells you to do, and he will take care of you." Only this time they said that he was doing just what the authorities were telling him to do. The parents of all 7 convicted men agreed, and said there was no way their sons could have committed such a heinous act. Of course, it's not uncommon for guilty men to maintain their innocence, nor for their parents to stand by them. On the other side of things, the Chong sisters' parents, Thelma and Dionisio Chong, said that the men's guilt spoke for itself. So here's where things get interesting. Many years later, in 2018, after all 7 men had spent 21 years behind bars, a bizarre discovery was made online.
What?
Several pictures were found on Facebook, posted by various members of the Chong sisters' family, including their own mother, Thelma. These photos featured 2 women that share an uncanny resemblance to Marijoy and Jacqueline.
Oh,
Like a scary resemblance.
my
In the minds of the people who found the photos
God.
and the families of the imprisoned men, this was proof that the Chong sisters were still alive and well, living in Canada, and that, like they thought, this whole case had been concocted by higher powers. Impossible. I mean, Marijoy's body was found at the bottom of a ravine, and even though Jacqueline's was never found, she surely suffered the same fate, right? Well, that's the thing. The body in the ravine that was identified as Marijoy's? It was never formally identified, and there's a lot of doubt over whether it was really her or not. If it really is them in these photos, that means that both women were never slain, and that the whole case was staged for who knows what reason. Okay, what's going on here? Well, like I said, the families of the convicted men were, and still are, certain that their brothers and sons didn't take the girls' lives. What I didn't make clear was that many people in the Philippines agree with them. Even before these photos surfaced, there had been several suspicious developments in the Chong sisters' case. For instance, during the men's trial, Rusia, the prosecution's star witness, was only allowed to be cross-examined by the defense team for 30 minutes, despite the fact that his testimony lasted for several days. Why?
Oh,
What is this place?
go away, ads. Why?
Paco
I'm
Larrañaga's
busy.
involvement in the whole thing is also highly questionable. A whopping 45 witnesses came forward and swore under oath that it was impossible for Paco to have taken the girls' lives. According to them, he was in Quezon City when the killings took place, and didn't travel to Cebu until the day after the whole incident. There was even a note in a logbook belonging to a security guard at Paco's condominium, stating that he returned to his home in Quezon City at 2:45 AM on July 16th, the very night the Chong sisters' lives were taken. Flight records were also presented by airport personnel, showing that Paco didn't take a flight on July 16th, 1997, and seemingly proving that he flew to Cebu the day after. All that's to say, he almost certainly wasn't in the city when it took place. All of this evidence was considered irrelevant by the judge for whatever reason.
That's stupid.
To many people now looking into the case, this was starting to seem like a cover-up. Luckily for Paco, his mother was Spanish, and as such, he was a Spanish citizen. With Spain being part of the EU, it of course opposed his capital sentence. If the Filipino government took his life, they'd be in breach of the principle of reciprocity, since the Spanish government would never take the life of a Filipino citizen in their custody. As such, in 2009, after serving 12 years in a Filipino prison, Paco was transferred back to Spain, where he'll serve the rest of his sentence. Today, he's allowed to leave the prison several times a week to work as a chef at a restaurant, and is classified as a third-degree inmate, the least dangerous classification.
Good for him.
As for the other convicted men, their death sentences were retracted, and 4 of them were actually released early due to the fact that they were young when the slayings took place. All 4 of them were eventually forced to surrender and return to jail at the request of President Duterte, who personally decided they should not be free men. Duterte also fired the man responsible for signing their release papers. But the question remains, are any of the men guilty at all? And if not, who is? Now, more than 20 years later, the Chong sisters' case remains a confusing mess, shrouded in mystery.
It seems
There are
obvious
those who
what's
believe the
going
group of
on.
killers are
These
getting off
men
too
shouldn't
softly.
be in prison.
Those who believe it's all just
The
a
girls
huge
are dead.
miscarriage of justice. Those who think it's a government conspiracy designed to protect the real culprits. And those who think the slayings never happened at all, and that both girls are alive and well, living in Canada. It's important to keep in mind that the women in those photos could just be family members who share a strong resemblance to Marijoy and Jacqueline.
I guess.
There's still not a huge amount of information on this case available in English, but from what I've researched online, I think I've covered all the bases. I know I have a lot of viewers from the Philippines, so I'd like to hear your thoughts about the case down in the comments, and see what the average citizen thinks happened in this one.
I'm pretty sure we think what's going on here. Those girls are alive. It's a giant cover-up. It's kind of obvious. The entire population knows it. And stop it with all the ads! Go
For coming on such short notice.
away! My God.
In keeping with the bizarreness of the previous 2 cases, let's take a trip over to India for this last one, and examine the recent grim mystery
Let's
of
just
the
go over to
Burari
India.
deaths.
Makes sense.
Burari, Central Delhi District.
Blurry.
Back in 2018, this was home to the Chundawats.
Why
a
are them two
respectable,
blurred?
middle-class family consisting of 11 members. With the head of the family,
Them
Wapal,
two are
having passed,
photoshopped.
The matriarch,
Them two
and
are
new head of the
blurred.
household, was
Actually, no,
77-year-old
everyone else
Narayan
besides...
Devi, living with
No,
her were her
everyone's
2 sons,
photoshopped.
Bhavnesh and Lalit, their wives, Savita and Tina, daughter, Pratibha, and 5 grandchildren, Priyanka, Nita, Monu, Dhruv, and Shivam. The family made
What's
their money
happening?
in plywood and groceries, and owned 2 stores in town. Their grocery shop, the centerpiece of the whole neighborhood, was on the 1st floor of their home. On the morning of July 1st, 2018, local shoppers were surprised to find the store still closed with the lights off. Strange. Bhavnesh, the eldest son, cherished the business like one of his children. Nobody could remember a time where he opened the store late. As the morning went by, nobody from the family had come downstairs to open the shop doors. Concerned,
They're
a friend
dead.
of the family decided to go inside and check that everything was alright. Bizarrely, the door was still open. He entered, and what he found inside was like a scene from a horror movie.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hanging in a circular formation from the hallway ceiling were 10 bodies, swinging back and forth like tree branches in the wind. Their hands were bound behind their backs. Blindfolds covered their eyes. Tape covered their mouths.
So clearly
Cotton wool plugged their ears.
they didn't do it themselves.
Pieces of cloth masked all of their faces. 5 stools stood on the floor beneath them. The only other family member, 77-year-old Narayan, was found lying on the floor, all of the life squeezed out of her. The Chundawats were no more. Their family friend ran outside and sounded the alarm and one of India's darkest and weirdest cases was officially under investigation. Detectives on the case were faced with several difficult questions. Who had done this to the family? The respectable Chundawats didn't have any known enemies. Why were 10 of them hanging so ritualistically, yet the family's matriarch wasn't? What was the significance of the taped mouths, wrapped eyes, covered faces, and blocked ears? An autopsy confirmed that all the family members' lives had ended without a struggle. There was nothing untoward in any of their systems. The first thing the authorities had to establish was whether the Chundawats had done this to themselves, or if they'd been slain by some unknown perp or
That's
perps.
what I think.
The fact that there were 5 stools in the room, and that nobody in the family had struggled, suggested the former. But it didn't make any sense that they would have all tied their hands behind their backs and covered their eyes, mouths, ears, and faces. Not to mention, some of their feet were still touching the ground slightly. The blindfolds and face coverings had all been cut from a single bedsheet inside the house. So, if this whole thing was the Chundawats' own doing, then it appeared to have been a very spur-of-the-moment decision with minimal planning. Several other bizarre clues came to light when the investigators examined the scene. Most notably, 8 cell phones belonging to the family were found taped inside a drawer, hidden from view. What did this all mean? The detectives soon learned that Lalit, the 45-year-old second son of Narayan, who was also found swinging in the hallway, had been acting very strangely in the days leading up to the incident.
What do you mean?
He'd been talking about how his deceased father was appearing to him in his dreams, and how his old man was trying to possess him. They pursued this lead, and found 11 diaries and a number of notebooks belonging to Lalit that took this investigation in a completely unexpected direction.
Oh!
For the past 11 years, Lalit had been documenting his obsession with moksha, a set of rituals that were meant to bring about the salvation of his family's souls. You see, Lalit had a side hobby: the occult.
Stupid
And what's
kid!
more, he'd somehow gotten his whole family interested in his strange practices. His notebooks and diaries detailed the strange rituals that they'd all been practicing, and how they believed these rituals were bringing them closer to summoning the spirit of their deceased patriarch, Narayan's husband, Bhopal.
No.
The most vital piece of evidence found in these notes, however, were instructions written by Lalit himself on how the family should tie their hands behind their backs, and how they should cover their faces in preparation for the so-called Kriya, the ritual that would finally allow them to meet their patriarch's spirit.
Stupid.
It also stated that since Narayan couldn't stand, she would complete the ritual on the floor. Since their remains were found in the same way Lalit had specified in his notes, it quickly became clear that the family had done this to themselves.
Duh.
They had obviously been planning this for a long time, and had somehow managed to keep it a secret from everybody. Nobody in the neighborhood had any idea that the family were actually practicing dark magic.
It's not dark magic, it's
The
called
most haunting part of
stupidity.
all of this is that it appears that the Chundawats thought they'd actually survived the ritual. Lalit himself had written in his notes, "Everyone will tie their own hands, and when the Kriya is done, then everyone will help each other untie their hands." He'd even made notes about how they were going to perform the Kriya again a week later to bring fortune to another relative. Priyanka was engaged to be wed that next week as well, and the whole family had been excitedly preparing for the event. They all had future plans and aspirations. They clearly didn't expect things to end the way they did. Though from an outsider's perspective, it's hard to see how they couldn't have.
I know.
Lalit was clearly a delusional man, and investigators concluded that this was all a case of shared psychotic disorder, and that the family had decided to follow Lalit's instructions without question.
Be.
Still, it's hard to imagine how one goes about convincing 10 family members to willingly go through with such a plan.
Yeah.
Despite all of the evidence, there are of course still those who believe that someone else was responsible for what happened to the Chundawats.
No, clearly
However,
not.
without any other evidence, suspects, or possible motive, I think it's safe to say that this case has officially been solved.
I think it's safe to say that they're stupid. Oh my god, this is like the 6th ad.
Fight alongside.
We're even done, so it doesn't even matter. Anyways, guys, tell me what you thought down in the comments below. Stay strong, everyone. Stay safe. Wear your seatbelt, wear your helmet, wear your mask. Don't put the flashlight behind you. Don't look into haunted mirrors. And as always, have a nice day.